Excited.
It is their first time on the show, but I'm happy they're here. Hey, what's up, America? Welcome to Unscripted. On Unscripted, the show. Listen, I'm sure you've seen it a million times. Hold on, is that echoing from me? The show, what we try to do here is educate and entertain by covering the news stories of the day. And then what we do is we interview the very best and brightest that LinkedIn has to offer about their favorite music, movies, and books. Today's guest is Kathleen Stockham, the CEO. Oh, no. So many CEOs on this show. I'm sorry. You were a CMO of South College. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Oh, thank you. It's exciting. CEO would be nice, but CMO is my lane. I'll stay there.
CMOs are cooler anyway. All right. So before we get to the news and before we get to your interview, what I like to do is, I don't know if you know this, but every day in this country is some reason to celebrate. Not every day is Easter or Thanksgiving or Flag Day. Some days is like Roasted Nuts Day or Cupcake Day. Today, National Carbonated Beverage with Caffeine Day. This is very specific. Are you a caffeine drinker by any chance?
Every day I have my fabulous mug of Earl Grey hot tea every day without fail, usually about 30 ounces.
So not carbonated, but still caffeine. Do you Coke, Pepsi, anything? Are you still?
No, I haven't had a soda in probably 20 years or longer. I just quit drinking them. Wasn't worth it. I get all I need out of my hot tea. I don't drink coffee, so no, I'm good.
They're very bad for you, the amount of sugar in these things. It's unbelievable.
Watching my dad pour a Coca-Cola over a battery, where the cables had oxidized, and watching him pour Coca-Cola when I was a little kid over that, and watching all the emulsification, everything begin to disappear. I was like, yeah, I'm not drinking that.
I'm glad you brought up Coca-Cola because I have a little bit of history here because once again, we're trying to educate and entertain. So 1767, carbonated water was invented. Then in 1819, we discovered caffeine. And then finally in 1905, Coca-Cola put the two together because they stopped putting cocaine in Coca-Cola, which you have to, it's got to be like, even in 1905, when they smushed the two together, people must have been upset that there wasn't cocaine in Coke anymore. No, I don't think caffeine has the same bite. I don't know. I've never had a cocaine to Coke, but they must have been pretty intense.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, it's also, you think about all the things that they put in soda and even these energy drinks today, when you sit down and really stare at the label, no. So I'll stick to my hot tea.
It's horrifying. So I pulled up how much caffeine is in each kind of drink. Coke is lagging way behind. It's less. So 34 milligrams for Coke. Black tea is 47. Coffee is 95, but I feel like that's per cup. So I think if you drink a decent amount of coffee, but then to your point about energy drinks, 200 milligrams, 200 milligrams, 200 milligrams. And then a couple of times I had these Bang energy drinks that I'd buy from a convenience store. And those are the only things that would like make my heart race. And I looked it up. Those are 300 milligrams. So I think we're getting to the point where it's like the original Coke at this point.
Yes. I have a 24-year-old and a 22-year-old, and I have seen both of my kids, not frequently, but at least once or twice, take part in some of these energy drinks. They're both athletes. So it's just like, I guess it's just a young person's thing where they can, their heart and body can tolerate 200 and 300 milligrams of caffeine. I don't think I could do it. Yeah. Definitely not.
I remember Jolt Cola. Do you remember that thing? It was like in the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, I think that had like twice the caffeine of Coke. I don't know why that went away, and now we're obsessed with energy drinks. Just bring Jolt back.
Yeah, I don't know. It's again, I think if you go back through the last 20 or 30 years of soda, you had Coke and New Coke and Diet Coke and now Coke Zero and Coke No Sugar. And before I gave up soda, I was a Diet Pepsi drinker, and so you went through so many iterations of Pepsi Free, and I think it's just they're repackaging the same thing over and over again and just trying to find their niche and their audience. To put the same product with different clothes on it in front of the consumer.
So this is perfect because you're a CMO. I think a lot of these news stories and even this have a marketing spin to them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's obviously what just like new sugar-free soda is, just different iterations of the same thing. It's just marketing trying to squeeze more dollars out of somebody who doesn't want to drink sugar. But okay, so this is good. All right, so This is a couple days old at this point, but I did want to discuss. So the first news story I want to talk about is how Netflix and boxing both suck. Did you watch any of this fight, the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight?
I did not. Not a Netflix subscriber. Really don't consume that much television, to be honest with you. I'm still sort of stuck on Melrose Place on Prime Video, so sorry. But I'm aware of it. I'm aware of the fight, and I know when I checked my Facebook feed the next morning, everybody was complaining about the cost and the buffering and it timing out, and the fact that they felt like it was, maybe not necessarily a balanced fight. But I will say props to Mike Tyson. He and I are roughly the same age, and he put himself out there. I so love that. So age is just a number. Good for him.
Yeah, age is just a number. Although he looked fine. He looked better than any other 58-year-old would have looked in a ring. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it didn't hurt that he got many, many, many millions of dollars for showing up. So, I mean, showed up. He's in great shape, got paid, there you go.
So that's okay. So I do want to dive into that a little bit. So first of all, what blows my mind is that the reason I have the 1939. So that is a still of the first baseball game ever televised on television. So first baseball game 1939, first basketball game in 1940. What confuses me is that we've had sports on television technology for this long, and somehow Netflix screwed this up. And I can't begin to explain how pictures and sounds appear on my plastic box mounted to a wall. So far be it for me to criticize, but if you're in the business of putting words and sounds on a screen, shouldn't you have anticipated that this was going to be a big deal? And because here's the thing, the NFL and WWE are coming to Netflix, and that's going to be a huge problem if the NFL starts lagging behind, because right now it's perfect. If you have cable or even whatever you have, it's like I've never had an issue watching an NFL game. The last thing I think we want as fans is buffering. Can you imagine it starts buffering the first quarter and it doesn't come back until the third? I was stuck in the second round of the Tyson fight the whole way. I didn't see any of it.
Yeah, so if you recall, probably a good 10 years ago, remember CBS screwed up the Victoria's Secret holiday fashion show by absolutely, killing the internet, and the feed went down and people got upset about it. Remember Bill Gates came out to address all of his employees across the world. That was probably 8 or 9 years ago, and the feed crashed. I mean, you'd think, to your point, that if we've had this development from, a technological standpoint where you can withstand millions of users wanting to tune in, shame on Netflix for not, going out and buying that additional server or something, so that people would get their money's worth. I mean, it's just one of those things where I think, there's probably not necessarily all of the accountability that should be for something like this. You think they would have anticipated that, but maybe not.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, like MASH, for example, I think the series finale of MASH, something like half the country watched. It was like 160 million people. Like, okay, only 60 million people watched this, but like you should have. This is a huge deal. They should have known. I just don't know why. It's. Here's the other thing though. Netflix is too big to fail. It's not like people are going to go, I'm going to cancel my subscription and not watch the NFL now. So I don't think it'll really get hurt.
I'm going to disagree with you on that, though. What was the number one most canceled app the next morning? Go look at your stats.
Well,
Netflix.
Interesting. You know what? So we did a story a couple weeks ago where they were the least paused app. So I don't know. Maybe you're right. Hey, one bad night and they get screwed. Okay, here's the other thing from the marketing perspective. So this is the reason I put the purses down below. I think I'm not a boxing fan or anything, but I would venture to say that the female fighters, Serrano and Taylor, and then the fighters that fought before them, Barrios and Ramos, I would venture to say they're more skilled. They probably have more matches at this point. They're more invested in the sport, but they get paid exponentially less than the top two because the top two have story. They have sex appeal. They have scandal. They have things that you can build anticipation and drama around. Therefore, Jake Paul, who, is a YouTuber, gets 40 million. Tyson gets 20 million. And the real boxers get exponentially less because there's just nothing there. And that,
but I'm going to give you two reasons why that might be. One, supply and demand. Is there demand to watch female boxers and female UFC fighters. I don't know. And then secondly, I think there's just a continued kind of culture reluctance to watch two women beat the crap out of each other. I mean, that's just me. I'm not sure I would have necessarily tuned in for that. I just don't know if the demand is there. You can look at salaries of the NBA and the WNBA and kind of come to the same assertion. It's not that the athletes are less talented or less athletic or less deserving. It's just about supply and demand. You're going to get that turnout. If you're going to put your marketing dollars down, let's just go back to that as an inflection point. If you're going to put your dollars down to watch a fight, you're obviously going to make that bet. If I'm going to put my brand out to advertise, that there will be more men between certain ages, certain income levels that are going to be watching that than watching the women. So, unfortunately, it does come up with some inequity in the purses. But on the other hand, I think the rise of UFC and obviously of watching these incredible female athletes that are out there, and you've got this picture of this woman who's got this laceration, below her eyeball. I mean, that's something, and I think it just needs time. But I just don't know if there's ever going to be that cultural embrace to watch two female athletes just, completely knock heads. I just don't know.
I don't think so either. But so my third point was about this too, is like a lot of people, boxing fans, were upset because the idea of Jake Paul, a YouTuber, and Mike Tyson, a 58-year-old, fighting each other, like violated the sanctity of the sport. My point about the sanctity of the sport is, okay, one guy's wearing pink frilly shorts with his name on it. Somebody else got their ear bitten off. This chick, you can almost see her brain. The point of boxing is to hit your opponent in the head so many times their brain temporarily shuts off and they fall down. It's not a very sanctimonious sport to me. Like, it's fine to like it. I'm not judging on that level, but to pretend it's not just two barbarians smacking each other in the head. Will you stop? Who cares? I don't know. It's not chess.
Yeah. I remember when I first got started at AOL, I worked on the local end called Digital City, and I worked out of Digital City, Atlanta. And actually, one of the first big stories that we covered is when Mike Tyson got his ear bit off. He had bitten off the ear of Evander Holyfield. That was a huge story at the time because it was just like, wait, what? And I think, that started that, kind of that proliferation of expected, violence and activity. Going back to the commentary that these two kind of, one a legitimate, heavyweight champion and the other one being a YouTuber. I mean, look, everything's got a gimmick. I mean, how many people have signed up to watch these different reality stars, go at it. Tanya Harding's been trying to make inroads into becoming a UFC fighter. She is boxed. She's been paid to get out in the ring. I mean, there's just some of that voyeuristic factor of watching certain personalities, certain people go out there. That's why people watch Dancing with the Stars. That some of these celebrities, they can't dance, they don't have rhythm, but there is a certain appeal to the American, viewing consumer who's going like, yeah, I'm going to tune in for that. I want to see, this person go out there and make a fool of themselves.
We love car crashes. And here's the other thing too, like, I don't understand. I thought a lot about this because a lot of the disparaging remarks towards Jake Paul is he's just a YouTuber, but you got to give a guy credit who gets famous through YouTube, because that's 1,000% organic. He doesn't have a network behind him. He doesn't have makeup people and writers. Like, we think, oh, the cast of Friends, they're real celebrities. Well, not really. They don't write the words they say. They're made as pretty as they could possibly be. They do reshoots. Like, I don't know, man. It seems to be this weird thing like, oh, YouTubers suck. No, I think it's sort of reverse. They found a way, despite not having budgets, despite being up against something like 1 million videos are uploaded to YouTube every day. They fight through all that noise, and Jake Paul is now worth $80 million. I mean, that is fucking impressive. And he's worth less than his brother. His brother's worth, and I don't know what they do necessarily, but his brother's worth like 160 million from YouTube.
Yeah. Well, if you want to have some fun, go study Antonio Sabato Jr.'s social media. He's been calling out the brothers on a pretty regular basis since this, saying, hey, look, legitimate fight. I train. I'll fight both of you. So Antonio Sabato Jr. is go study him. That guy has always been in incredible shape, but he is definitely jonesing for that fight. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch.
But I'll tell you this, if I'm Jake Paul and I'm making $40 million, I would keep fighting grandfathers, because the last thing I want to do is fight a real boxer. When I just keep, you know what I mean? Just keep fighting old guys where you don't get hurt.
Right.
And get that kind of money. Like, I don't need legitimacy. I'll take the $40 million, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm loving the shout out to the late 50 folks. So go Mike Tyson. I dig that.
You had a good showing. All right. This is another one that fascinates me. So both Ben and Jerry are mental. Listen. Okay. So here's the deal. Ben and Jerry's is suing their owner, Unilever, alleging that it was censoring the things that Ben and Jerry were saying over Gaza, Palestine, and Israel. Okay, here's my point about this. I love Ben and Jerry. I love their ice cream. I love the ideology. I'm pro-hippie. How hippies were villainized, I'll never understand. So you had these people like, you know what? I like sex, drugs, music, and I don't like war. And people like, fuck that. That's weird conceptually. Who doesn't love those things and not like war? Anyway, my point about Ben and Jerry is you cannot sell out to a multinational conglomerate and then be surprised when they tell you to shut up about certain things. They sold to Unilever, which is like another disingenuous thing because they still present as Vermont hippies, but they sold out to Unilever in 2000 for $326 million. So what was your expectation? It's like when people buy big, dangerous animals and it eats them. Like, what did you think was going to happen with the tiger in your apartment? What did you think was going to happen when you sold out? You were not allowed to say things. Why does this surprise anybody?
Yeah, I've always sort of been fascinated with the weird fence straddling that happens when these companies want to, choose a side politically. They're either, really far to the left or really far to the right, and they're not really thinking carefully about, alienating, half of their consumer base. So look what we just all went through as a country with Bud Light. They took a particular stance. Half the country said absolutely not. The sales went under, and they sort of didn't learn their lesson. But then they quickly ran back and said, "Oh no, we love football. We love the flag." Right. And so the consumer, populace is like, I don't think so. So when you've seen this over and over and over, Starbucks has gone through this repeatedly where they have made somewhere in their leadership or somewhere in their ownership have taken a stance. From an ideology and political perspective, they stand here, and then half their consumer base is like, nope, I'm out. Look what happened to Mike Lindell and My Pillow. The guy was all over the country in every major retailer, and then he obviously began putting out opinions that didn't sit well with half the country, and in most cases, most of the retailers he worked with, and the exact same thing happened. So in the case of Ben and Jerry's, you're absolutely correct. They have gone into business with Unilever, which of course is part of Big Food. They're a huge company. They have millions of brands, and they're kind of stepping in, going, "Whoa, we need to be careful with that." Well, should have thought about that back when you agreed to be, acquired by this large conglomerate. And that's just that lack of kind of thinking ahead that some brands have. The team from Bud Light that I believe the woman was fired that came up with the campaign with Dylan Mulvaney. Again, they were thinking through their own personal feelings, their own personal ideology. And look, when you sit in a CMO chair, those are things you have to think about. It's not about you. It's not about your preference or your ideology. Your name's not on the building. You don't own the company. But when you put your personal perspectives out there, right, left, or whatever it is, you're not thinking ahead to the ramifications that, consumers, we're all equal. We all buy. We all have power of the purse. And it should never be about left or right. And look, people are going to vote with their wallet. They 100% will vote with their wallet. You could spend all day trolling social media, on X, on Facebook, Instagram, and people are saying, "Oh, I'll never buy that again. Oh, I'll never watch that again. I'll never do this again." And it's because, there has been a positioning of the brand that doesn't fit within the neat confines of what the consumer likes and respects. Just, take the Elvis Presley approach, which is, I'm an entertainer. I don't have a political opinion. Right. Elvis is very famous for saying that, I'm just an entertainer. I'm not here to take a side. I'm paraphrasing him, but I wish more and more brands would just do that. Leave the personal politics at home. Do the right thing for your brand. Do the right thing for your consumer, and not worry about what the political ramifications are. And the polarization that we have overall as a country, I think, is just it's sad. I see arguments on social media all the time. People I know, friends I have, colleagues, acquaintances on LinkedIn. You want to get really just kind of confused? Go look at LinkedIn from the day after the election, and these people are posting these sad photos, depressed photos. I called in sick today. But then on the other side, you have people that are giving, middle fingers and fist in the air, and they're excited. And it's like, come on, folks, just get up, go to work, keep going, and don't worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, we've been orchestrated. I do think there's a puppeteer aspect to this. Here's the other thing too, from Ben and Jerry's perspective. Do you think anybody would listen to Ben and Jerry's advice and go, you know what, we gotta rethink our position in Palestine? No, nobody gives a shit. Here's the other thing about Bud Light too that bothers me. Bud Light is so stupid because they alienated their base. Like, okay, I'm a white male in my 40s. I drink IPAs. But if I was forced to drink shitty beer, Bud Light is my shitty beer of choice. But that's what Bud Light is. It's shitty beer by volume. They are going after the wrong audience when they go after the ultra left. And they just, and I'm very left, but that's not who's drinking your shitty piss water. Like, just stick with the frat boys and whoever's listening to this horrible version of country that's everywhere right now. Like, that is don't alienate your base. That was what was stupid about this. Now, Ben and Jerry's isn't alienating their base because Ben and Jerry's have always been hippies with organic cows and blah, blah, blah. It's just nobody cares about your opinion. You know what I mean? So they put out these peace pops. Peace pops were supposed to inspire less military spending. No one's going to buy ice cream.
Well, but think about it. They're catering to a certain consumer base who's going to buy their product regardless because they believe in that particular direction. Again, it goes both ways. I've seen it both sides. There are people that are going to continuously show up and buy from the Chick-fil-A's and the MyPillows of the world because they want to contribute, they want to spend. And the same thing for this. People are going to buy Ben and Jerry's because they like it, they support it, but most importantly, they share the same ideology. It's a free country. You're free to believe in and just embrace that, and let's just move on.
Well, the big problem too is so you're in marketing, and this whole thing, for a long time, people cared about brand purpose. And my point was that was always bullshit because Apple has suicide nets at their factories. Amazon doesn't let the drivers go to the bathroom. Nike knowingly uses slave labor in child labor, and people still, because if it's cheap, if it's fast, if it's good, if it makes you cool, we don't really care. So Ben and Jerry's is good. So really, again, I'm from Massachusetts. If they were ultra right the fucking Cherry Garcia is unbelievable. I'm still buying it. So to some degree, we pretend on the surface because we think it speaks to how others feel about us, but nobody really cares. They just don't.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I think this is a good parlay into this headline is one of the craziest shits I've ever seen in my life. Gen Zers evidently hate luxury, but I would venture to say it's probably because they're poor. So 50 million people have stopped buying luxury brands like Dior and Burberry after broken promises to consumers. This is one of the most, unhinged articles I've ever read. So they go on and how people aren't buying designer bags and scarves and watches, and why? Well, some people on the inside think it's because of broken promises. They think it's because these high fashion shits aren't innovative. It's the service isn't there, the quality. No, it's because inflation is unbelievable. Eggs are out of control, rent, gas prices.
But there's a sub-headline here. You don't have. I'm a woman, so I can speak to
let's hear it.
They're not buying the brands, but if you go look at the subculture of counterfeit, of imitation brands, that is a billion-dollar industry. And you can find it anywhere. You can look for ads on Instagram. You can look for ads all over the web. You can find it off of certain apps. There is a growing and gigantic market of people that, you're right, they can't afford the $10,000 Chanel bag of the season, but they absolutely can possibly squeak out and afford the $300 knockoff.
Right. So it looks like
that's the other headline. So you're correct. It is definitely an inflation issue. It's definitely people that are conserving their, discretionary spending on luxury items. But, they're obviously willing to carve out dollars to perhaps buy something that looks good. Because, again, it's all about the Instagram photo, the appearance, the TikTok video. But they're just not spending $10,000.
Well, here's the thing, too. I'm constantly fascinated by, what's real and what's not. Because the statistics, I looked them up. supposedly 37% of Americans can't come up with $500 in case of an emergency. 56% of Americans can't come up with $1,000. So I'm like, oh shit, this must be real. Then you look in this article, it said one of the luxury brands that's fine is Birkin. I never heard of them, but then I looked up some bags. The first bag I looked at was $195,000. Then I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. But then there's one that's $400,000. These ones below, they're pre-owned. You can get a nice pre-owned bag for 30 grand or 19 grand. And it's fitting that the first ones have windows like a house because they cost as much as a house. What?
Yeah.
And here's the thing, utilitarian speaking, like this bag in a $10 bag do the same thing, right? They hold shit. So there's not like this, okay, a $100,000 house and a $500,000 house. There's a lot of value difference there. More rooms, more bathrooms, more land. In this case, it is 1,000% just showing everybody that you're better than them, that you have more money. A $400,000 bag?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of thoughts there. I think it also depends on the person. Women dress for other women. I think that's pretty much common knowledge when they get ready each day, when they're putting together their outfits or putting together their accessories and things like bags. So it's all, to your point, it's all about, look what I carry. But on the flip side of that, it also depends on the person. If I have $30,000 to spend, that's not what I'm going to spend it on. I am not going to buy a bag for $30,000. First of all, I'd end up divorced. On top of that, there's, to your point, other than being able to be, I think, a theft target. Hey, look at me! I'm carrying a $30,000 bag.
30,000? No, wait, yeah.
You're kind of powered by your own self-satisfaction that you can do these things. Now, I'm certainly not immune. I love designer bags. I think they're fabulous. But designer bags are something that you buy when you can, as you can. If you go and look, there's so many places that you can find, to your point, gently used bags. Real is a great place. eBay is a great place, if you're wanting to find that luxury on a budget. But when you do have the opportunity to buy them, they're also an investment. So you take care of them, you get them serviced, you get them cleaned, you put them in their little night bag and you put them on the shelf so that they stay protected. If you're just gonna, if you've got that kind of money to blow, go for it. The economy is yours. Go spend that money. Go buy that $30,000.
Yeah, I mean, at the level where you're spending $400,000 on a bag, it's not like that or the mortgage. Like, you have FU money, right? So you just you've run out of things to blow money on. So now you're like,
as my grandmother used to say, you have more money than sense.
Well, yes. Here's another. This was somebody writing about the article on LinkedIn, which I found totally unhinged. He said something about so Gen Z spending is now more focused on experiences like travel and events, and not only that, this is the craziest sentence I've ever read. They're also spending more money on cars and yachts rather than bags and clothes. Cars and yachts? Gen Z is buying cars and yachts instead of scarves and bags.
But Gen Z also has the one thing at that age that you and I didn't have, and that's social media. It is all about the impression. It's all about becoming, wannabe influencers. It's all about, the photo, and it's all about that appearance. And unfortunately, it's just an addictive disease that this particular demographic, I think, is just highly susceptible to. And it's unfortunate. Thank God they didn't have Apple phones and social media when you and I were coming along at that time. And I'm older than you are, but
I would say even if they did, like, even if I wanted a yacht, I could have had a yacht. Like, as desperate as I am, oh man, if only I had a yacht, I'd get more likes. I fucking can't have a yacht. Like, I don't know, these kids these days.
Yeah, and it's going to be something else. And I think at some point in time, when the next generation comes along, it's going to be something entirely different. And I think it's just a lot of posing and posturing. When I was in high school, it was about having the IROC Z, Camaro, and it was about having the haircut and the upturned collar and pennies in your Norwegians and all of those things. And so this is just the new penny in your Norwegians. It's, look at me, I'm on a boat. Look at me, I'm in an exotic car. And the next generation is going to have something completely different. How
high can it go? You're gonna be on the moon. You're gonna take a picture on the moon. Like, where does it end? Like, how much more? It's a $400,000 bag. How much more can we spend on shit?
I don't know.
Speaking of kids, they have horrible taste in music because they would not have put any of these people on there. This is the get to know the CMO portion of the show. So the questions are your 3 favorite bands, your 3 favorite movies, and your 3 favorite books. First up, these young men. Oh, remember the Van Halen, the original. Like, listen, I think you said you like all genres, which I think to mean that you also like Van Hagar. Yes?
Yeah, I'm a huge Sammy Hagar fan. I love all genres, including Gary Sharon. Not too bad. Definitely not in the DLR or Hagar category, but Gary Sharon wasn't a bad guy. You almost felt sorry for him. But this is definitely my favorite band. I actually got to see Sammy Hagar back in July, just a few months ago, at the Best of All Worlds tour with Jason Bonham and Joe Satriani and, of course, Michael Anthony. It was incredible. It's literally one of the best shows I've been to. Now, these dudes are all in their 60s, and Sammy Hagar, I believe, is like 76 years old. You would never know it. He is running around that stage. An incredible show. I saw it in Atlanta. It was about 95 degrees at night. We are sweating. We are dancing. We had an awesome time. So it was great. But, grew up listening to these guys, love them. Love and then Sammy Hagar, the Hagar era was when I was in college. So it's what everybody had on, when you go into any frat house or any, party, that's what was playing. So it's the best. And, it's also one of those things that you can turn it on, have it on in the background. You know all the words, all the songs. I mean, why not?
I have no problem. I love Van Halen. I've seen them too. And what bothers me about Van Halen is that I can't appreciate Eddie Van Halen as much as I should because I don't play guitar. I know he's a genius. I just watched this whole thing about his Frankenstrat and how he put it together and how he took it apart and put it back together again and added shit. I'm like, he's a musical genius. And then he invented tapping, which is or he popularized it, whatever. He is ground zero when it comes to like wild guitar innovation. And I know he gets the credit, but I don't think he gets, he's better. He's recognized as one of the best. I think he's even better than that, or was. May he rest in peace. But man, just unbelievable. And to survive the lead singer change and still be great is notable. Yes. I'll say this too. David Lee Roth is, I think, the most obnoxious human in the world. Like, if I can't sit through an interview with him, songs are great. Don't get me wrong, but God, is David Lee Roth obnoxious. Have you listened to an interview with him? Oh my God.
I have. I follow him actually on Facebook. So he's very much into steampunk. So you see a lot of these steampunk themed videos and music and kind of things that he puts together. The guy is just wicked creative for sure. And, personality-wise, he's a little bit out there. I read his book, Crazy from the Heat, and it's funny. When you read his, I'm a big biography girl, but I read his bio, and you can actually hear his voice in your head as you're reading the pages. But the one thing that you really glean as you're reading Crazy from the Heat is he's really a smart marketer. He's the one that designed Van Halen logo. He's the one that came up with, kind of their look and their positioning, because Alex and Eddie were the musicians. They were the serious creative musicians. But it's really kind of Dave's view of what he wanted the band to be at that time, Sunset Boulevard, late 70s, breaking away from disco. He had that whole vision. Read that book. It's fascinating. He's actually a brilliant marketer, just like Gene Simmons.
I was going to say that sounds very Gene Simmons-esque. I do love musical memoirs. They're, I think, the finest of the genres. David Lee Roth, too, I think does belong in the pantheon of great frontmen. Like, he is, when you think of a rock and roll frontman, I think it's Robert Plant, Axl Rose, David Lee Roth, Steven Tyler, and then maybe Freddie Mercury or something. But like, just big, loud, like they got it,
Yeah, there's just that it factor that he
There's
has.
an it factor.
That other lead singers at that genre just did not have at that time. So, you put him next to David Coverdale, same hair, just not the same it factor. Coverdale is very talented, great singer, but he doesn't command that attention from men and women that DLR was able to do.
No, and Coverdale's a good example of somebody like who looks like they should. He has everything is there except for the big personality. The big voice is there. It's I don't know.
And his choice in wives.
No. They're pretty. Here's another. So I think it's all three of your music selections have the same thing, which is like, okay, let's bring up Loverboy. This is, at the very least, listen, I'm not a huge Loverboy fan, but they look like a rock and roll band of the era. Like rock and roll, I don't even know if it exists today, but it doesn't seem like it does. I think the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, and that was kind of it. Now it's just like, they don't do like this anymore.
Show me a woman in the early 80s that wasn't infatuated with Mike Reno. So I just saw these guys too. They opened for Sammy Hagar and Best of All Worlds tour, same show. These guys were also in their 60s and 70s, and Mike Reno has never sounded better. He's looks different, obviously, than from his prime, but they sounded amazing. I'm a huge Loverboy fan. I love them when MTV first launched. They were obviously in that first round of videos that were heavily circulated. Love their music. I have all their albums. I'm that dork at the concert that's standing up because I know all the words to all the songs. That's me. They are a fantastic arena band. They put on a fantastic show. I've seen them live, I don't know, 10, 12 times at different points. And what I love is they're out there for the musicianship. So this particular lineup, you've got Scott Smith standing there second to the left. He died, I believe.
Boating accident, wasn't it?
Yeah, about 15, 20 years ago. So they have Scott Genevieve, who's been in bass. Why I know this, I don't know. But I just love them. It's just easy. Boy meets girl, girl loves boy, girl leaves boy, kind of rock and roll. And it's easy. It's fun. And I'm sorry, find me anybody that will not tap their toe a little bit to working for the weekend. I dare you to find one that won't.
I will not call them a one-hit wonder in front of a Loverboy super fan, but I got to tell you, listening to Spotify, that's the only song I recognized. But I was shocked to learn they're 4-time multi-platinum or 4 multi-platinum albums. That's unbelievable. They were on the top 10
7 Juno Awards. You are correct. They won the Canadian equivalent to the Grammy called the Juno Awards. So there you go.
They've sold over 10 million albums. They're in the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. Canadian bands across genres have a little bit of Canadian in them, because I think you can tell Rush is Canadian. I think you can tell like Bryan Adams is Canadian. I think even like Simple Plan, which is part of that pop punk thing.
Yeah, there's Honeymoon Suite, Chilliwack, April Wine. So yeah, I mean, you can go on and on about Canadian bands for sure.
There's a little bit of a Canadian sensibility about them, which is interesting. Because once again, like they look at and then you listen, you're like, yeah, they're definitely Canadian. Yeah. All right. A band that is definitely not Canadian. One of my favorites too. Motley Crue. Oh my! Speaking of memoirs, Dirt is like one of the greatest rock and roll memoirs of all time.
I read it.
Tremendous, and also a very good shitty Netflix movie. Like it wasn't good on the surface, but it was good.
No, it's a great movie. It really gets into it. I think it does an excellent job of portraying kind of where they were in the early days, living in this, breakdown 1-bedroom, nasty apartment off Sunset Strip. But the one thing that's undeniable is that, the work ethic, when you see those very first rehearsals, when they're, working on Kickstart My Heart and some of these other Shout at the Devil and some of these other awesome tunes, the push for perfection. Tommy Lee literally was marching in a high school band and then automatically got in with this crazy group, and his life completely changed. I've seen these guys live several times, saw them I want to say about 5 years ago when they did their that time their farewell tour. Got to see them in Atlanta. They were fantastic. Now they're another one that, to your point you made on LinkedIn, not always great live. I think some of these latest shows, I think Vince Neil is showing some wear on his voice, but I mean this is also great music to put on when you're driving. I listen to a lot of Motley Crue when I work out. You just want to get up and and just go hit something when you're listening to their music, and you love that. I mean, it's what you listen to when you're doing cardio box. But there's also some interesting, backstories to a lot of their songs. My husband and I have a long running joke about the song, Don't Go Away Mad, Just Go Away, Girl, Just Go Away.
Great song,
that song? I love that song. So, so there's a lot of fun to that. And I think that actually the first time my husband, when we were dating, came to my apartment, he pulled out a couple of CDs out of we had CD towers at that time. You remember CD towers? But he pulled out one of my Loverboy CDs. He pulled out one of my Motley Crue CDs. He's like, I love these guys. And I was like, dude,
wow, that's the one. He's the one. I just love that there was a point in this world, and we were alive. We're lucky enough to be alive, when rock and roll bands dress like this, they put on some makeup, they sung about Satan, and we were like, yes, this is tremendous, incredible. I love every minute of this. Motley Crue and Poison. So I got into music early. I think probably like I like Michael Jackson, I liked Cyndi Lauper, but Poison and Motley Crue and the hair metal bands that followed felt like my first, like, this is for me, even though I was like 6. I was like, this is fucking incredible.
I was like 6, but okay.
Yeah. It still felt like, yeah, I can relate to this. And it's wacky stories like when, the Ozzy Osbourne thing where they're trying to gross each other out. I think Nikki Sixx died with the heroin needle in his arm. Like, they are really rock and roll, like black tar rock and roll.
Yeah. What's really interesting, though, is such a commentary on the change in our society. So at this point, this is the metal stage of kind of the late, mid to late 80s going into just about the early 90s when, of course, Pearl Jam sort of ruined it for everybody. Yeah. But, these guys can show up in heels, full makeup, full hair. And there was no cross judgment. There was no, this is too much, or no, that's not enough, or, there's none of that kind of gender commentary that happened at that time. It was just something everybody kind of went, okay, we're doing this now.
Right.
And Boy George on the other end of the spectrum, who was in full makeup, full hair, and everybody kind of went, all right.
Grunge is conceptually bizarre because, okay, I like grunge, like I like Nirvana, I like Pearl Jam. They were of the, I was at the age at that point where I should have been getting into music, but, I already was. I didn't know that they were going to kill hair metal, and I don't like resent them or anything, but I just think it's conceptually bizarre that we had Sunset Strip, we had guys dressing like lunatics and doing a bunch of coke, and there was hookers and strippers, and like we liked all that. And then some guys come in flannel, and they're very depressed and sad, and they hate fun, and we're like, I like this now. Okay, I guess I do, but man.
To give it perspective, now you just need to show up with a Southern accent and a pair of cowboy boots and look halfway decent in a pair of jeans, and you're a country star.
Okay, we're gonna talk about that a little when we get to Saturday Night Fever, because I'm gonna pull a through line there. But yes, this modern country, which is Nickelback with twang, by the way. I don't think it's horrible, and I can't escape it, and I hate every second of it, and I hate that we went from that. Like, I would imagine at some point, if you went to a brewery, you were hearing Kickstart My Heart and Girls, Girls, Girls and Dr. Feelgood. And now I hear about blue jeans, and I know that's a trope, but every single country music artist sings about their pants. Why? Why pants? These guys are singing about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. These guys like pants. Have you seen my jeans? They're blue. I wear pants. It's so fucking weird.
That's just what they have to talk about.
What other genre? Does anyone think about khakis or corduroys? No, it's just these assholes. Your pants. Shut up about your pants, or like why? Oh my god. Anyway, we don't. Oh, we only have 18 minutes, so let's move on to movies. Top Gun. What a boy! What a mid 80s treat. Highest grossing film of 1986. John.
Yeah. So this movie is my absolute favorite. It is very close to my heart. I have a 22-year-old son about to graduate from Ole Miss here in December. He's Navy ROTC, and he is going to flight school. He's going to be a fighter pilot. So it's come full circle to me. This movie came out when I was getting out of high school. It was absolutely the only thing anybody listened to talk about. It was also one of the highest recruitment periods for the United States Navy. Is when this movie came out. The soundtrack is incredible. Speaking of Loverboy, has a track on this soundtrack.
Sure does.
It's just an amazing photo, just an amazing. And so I have an autographed poster in my house of all the stars of the movie, autographed the poster. And so it's just really near and dear to me and to my family for a lot of reasons, but seriously, one of the best, most exciting movies ever made. Can't deny it.
And it was back in, I often use the Jurassic Park moment. Up to then you had never really seen anything that looked like a dinosaur that wasn't claymation or stop motion. Yeah. And it was like a holy shit, look at that. There was a time where seeing, jets fly around like that on film had never been seen before, and it blew people's fucking minds. Now we're jaded to everything. CGI is just like anything on the screen is like, it's made by a computer. But they were really doing those stunts, and that's a little fucking crazy.
Yeah, and look at somebody like Tom Cruise. He's in his, I believe he's 63 now, I believe, and he's still doing stunts. He's still jumping off stuff. So I mean, it gives hope to all of us that are kind of getting up there in age that if he can do it,
He's really he is a movie star, and I don't think people like that. Like he is. I mean, he's a Scientology weirdo too, but also he's a real movie star. He has hit after hit after hit. He's still relevant, and in some ways, some real ways. It's crazy. And this is from 1986. It wasn't even his first movie. I mean, the guy's been killing it. Plus, it has the best homoerotic volleyball scene in the history of cinema.
The volleyball scene, oh my goodness. Again, Rick Rossovich, who didn't love that when he was flexing and posing? Hello.
Some oiled up Val Kilmer every day, I think, right? Val Kilmer also had a streak where he was Iceman, he was Doc Holliday, he was Batman. Like he was on fire for a while too. Cool nicknames. Like this movie really had everything for an 80s audience. I think it was just custom built.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I have 3 cats. I have Maverick, Goose, and Slider. So there you go. Call
Don't let Goose. You gotta tell Goose, watch out for the canopy, because that was
right.
I like that they really made you like Goose with his family, and his wife loves him, and then they kill him. Like, oh, that's perfect.
But then if you watch the second Top Gun Maverick, you see that Goose's son, comes back and
singing Great Balls of Fire at the same piano. I know, it's real. Life comes full circle in many ways. Yeah. All right. Speaking of fashion, The Devil Wears Prada. Oh, so you do have your dude. Why do you love The Devil Wears Prada?
This is one of those awesome movies that you can see it 1,000 times and you'll still sit down and watch it when it comes on. I bought it, so I have it on Amazon Prime. I love it. It's just there's so many awesome lines. I think all of us somewhere in our career has worked for someone like Miranda Priestley and someone, of that particular personality that I think it's relatable. It's funny. The fashion is amazing. The soundtrack, go pull it down if you've never pulled it down. The soundtrack is absolutely incredible. There's so many great things about this movie. And when you go and you kind of look at when they made it, and they're pulling, Anne Hathaway was relatively unknown. Yeah. Obviously, Emily Blunt was also relatively unknown. This really put them on the map. And of course, I'm not a huge Meryl Streep fan, but nobody could have played Miranda Priestley except her. But I love this movie. It's just one of those awesome feel-good movies that you can watch any day, anytime. If it's on, you're in front. It's like Roadhouse. If it's on, you're watching it.
Just like Roadhouse. Same
plot. It's like Roadhouse.
This to me is one of those things where I fancy myself as sort of an existentialist, and I believe that life has no meaning except for the meaning that you assign things. And I think fashion is such a perfect example of this, because to me it is totally meaningless, but it's $1 billion industry. People are very, very into it. It's people are paying $400,000 for a bag, so it means a lot to certain people. And I did see this movie, and I just thought it was a fascinating look into the lives of people that really care about some shit that I cared nothing about. But it doesn't matter that I don't like it. It's a thing.
Yeah, but see, fashion is a lot like the Tesla Cybertruck. There's a market for it. It's not your thing. It's not my thing, but somebody's going to want it. I see these going up and down the road, and I think to myself, oh, dear God, if I had $100,000 burning a hole in my pocket, that is not what I'd buy. But, hey, hats off to you. Go for it.
I know. It's like this weird pull for everyone to like. They want people to like what they like, and I think that's stupid. I think just be fascinated that people are paying $400,000 for a bag or $100,000 for what looks like a dumpster on wheels. I don't know.
Yes. Right on.
All right. Let's go to this. Oh, here we go. Movie number 3. I'll let you talk about it, but that dinner scene is fucking hilarious. I don't think I've ever sat through the whole movie, but that thing where Travolta's father hits him in the head.
Yeah, my hair.
What's on my hair?
No, I love it. This movie is so iconic. It represents. Think about the indelible dent it made in our culture, both music and socially, speaking to that time, speaking to that period. I was a kid when this came out. The soundtrack is undeniable, has stood the test of time. The story is, typical Travolta, kind of that hard scrabble coming out to be the hero. The sequel to this movie was Staying Alive, which was the 80s sort of upgraded version where Tony Manero is now dancing on Broadway. It was directed by Sylvester Stallone. Incredible soundtrack for both movies. I love this. It's just another one of those movies that, again, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, it's on. You're going to sit down and watch it because it's just undeniable. But it's quite the statement of what was purported to be, 18, 19, 20-year-olds at that time, at that period of time, in that 76, 77 era. And anything that's got Bee Gees on it, I'm signing up for that. So what we didn't talk about in my musical taste is I have deep R&B, I have all of that, rap, all of those things I love, but Bee Gees all day long, this one rocks.
Have you seen the Bee Gees documentary on HBO? Because it's fantastic.
I sure have. Yes, yeah, I have.
I'm saying this as someone who doesn't give a shit about the Bee Gees, but I watched that and I was like, God damn, this is good. So there's another hilarious line. That dinner scene should be studied. There's another line where the mother says, I have to go to church. I went for confession today, but I got to go back because I'm going to pray that her son calls her.
Father Frank.
Travolta says, you're turning God into a telephone operator. That's hilarious. Like that whole scene is gold.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's what I was saying earlier. It really speaks to the culture of the times. You've got this obviously devout Catholic family in Brooklyn, and it's just kind of a statement of that time. And you're right. There's some really incredible lines in that when she asks, she wants to go to confession so that Father Frank, her son, the older son will call her. But I mean, you also have some really interesting, debuts. You've got Donna Pescow, who ended up becoming like this major television star, is in this movie. And then Fran Drescher is in this movie. It's just kind of in an extra role. I mean, so that's actually, I think it's kind of great. So anyway, I love the movie.
So whenever anybody gives movies within a certain time period, I look up the Siskel and Ebert review. So they both really liked this. Siskel sort of downplayed how much he liked it, but as it turns out, is one of his two favorite movies, and he bought this suit. Did you know that? And then ended up. So yeah, I mean that was.
Yes, I did know that. I do remember reading that. It's great, and I mean, it's such a wonderful. It's like a lot like Gone with the Wind that came out in '39. It's such a nice timestamp of the period of what was going on. So.
I think it's interesting too, because the Siskel and Ebert review went a little deeper, as they tend to do. But they were saying that it's such an interesting look at like the hard scrabble life of inner city youth, and really, speaking of working for the weekend, all they have to give their life meaning and aim is dancing on a Saturday night. And I was like, very interesting, Siskel and Ebert. I think you're right.
Well, and you realize how much the culture's changed. You're in a nightclub, and what you don't see are people holding up cell phones and taking selfies, and yeah, I mean, it really kind of is a stark reminder of how much we've changed as a culture, because people are there just sort of enjoying the environment, enjoying the music, and socializing as young 20-somethings tend to do, and meeting, boys and girls, and there's no cell phones involved. You gotta love that.
What a time to be alive. Oh, this was the through line with modern country to me. So because I do this show a lot and I talk about music, it makes me think about my own musical taste, right? So disco gets a lot of hate, and I never really understood it. I don't like it, but then my whole thing was like, well, just shut it off. And then it occurred to me with modern country, I can't shut it. I can't escape it. Every time I go to a brewery, every time I go to a thing, it's just fucking everywhere. And I live in Massachusetts, and it's inescapable. So I think for people that hate the disco in the 70s, they just couldn't get away from it, and that's the reason they hated it. So now I start to understand why. I mean, listen, I think disco, it was out at the time like where there was real rock and roll, and I could see how like a teenage boy would hate it. I get it. But man, at least they weren't singing about pants. I guess that's my big takeaway here.
Well, it's more than just the Bee Gees. I mean, you've got the Tavares, you've got, all these other, amazing acts that were coming along. And like I said, I have a deep love for, classic R&B, classic 70s soul, and there's just so many great things. I think as you're sort of reflecting to today's country, I think it's just so much easier now to get yourself out there as a country star, because you mentioned something earlier, about the Paul brothers. You don't have to have a major network behind you and a major, representation, an agent. All you need is a YouTube channel and a whole lot of hard work and grit and a gimmick, and all of a sudden you're off and flying. So, you know, you can put on a pair of jeans and, you know, and a pair of boots. And if you look halfway decent, a pair of jeans and play the guitar and sing about, you know, girls and, you know, and the kind of pants you wear in your pickup truck, and you've got a country song, you know.
I know, and it's so like, it's one of those like tropey things, and you know, but it's true, because every time, okay, I get a lot of like modern country people on this list. So what I'll do is I go to Google and I go, whoever the artist is, jeans lyrics, and inevitably they'll have at least 5 songs.
Yeah. So in perspective, so I spent this past weekend in Nashville. Love Nashville. It's one of my favorite places. My husband and I celebrated our 27th wedding anniversary. We went to Nashville to go stay at our favorite hotel and just go to Broadway and just go do a lot of people watching. And I'm telling you what, every single bar that you go into, I don't know if you've ever been up and down Broadway, every single bar, you know, Kid Rock's bar, John Rich's bar, Morgan Wallen's bar, and even all these kind of no-name bars, every single one as you walk by has got some incredible band, some incredible singer. Every place we went, these folks are serious musicians. They are good. I heard some of the best singers I've ever heard in my life and fronting all these different clubs. And you walk in and, you know, and it's amazing. And there's a ton of people and the music is everywhere. And some bars have a band on every single floor. We went to John Rich's bar and he had this little gal singing with a couple of players on the bottom floor. You go to the very top floor on the roof and you've got this incredible girl who was singing with her guitar, and she was good. So, I mean, you know, for every person that's out there that's got some kind of okay talent, Nashville is full of them, that they're amazing.
Is Motley Crue? Is Motley Crue on any floor? Because I would really like, can we get a little hair metal somewhere at some point?
You know, I don't think Vince is feeling too good these days. I think Tommy Lee has sort of jumped off the cliff a little bit.
Mick Mars is like frozen. Doesn't he have like,
Mick Mars, God bless him. Now he lives in Nashville. I know who his next door neighbor is. I know that person. He lives in Nashville, and I think he's retired completely from public life.
Well, hasn't he been turning into bone since like 1985? That's a thing. He's got like something.
Yeah, he's got something going on, but you know, I mean, he still made great music. I got to, you know, see him the last time I saw the Crue play in Atlanta, and they were pretty good. But still, I mean, it doesn't matter. I have all the CDs, I have all the records, and I have Spotify. It's all I need.
Yeah, that's all we need. Leave the memories alone. All right. Let's talk about your books real quick, because we don't have much time. But hey, a rock and roll memoir, Sammy Hagar. You know what I think? Young is all the tequila.
Yeah, no, this is another great book. I loved it because it's not so much about what went on in the heyday of his time as the Red Rocker or on Van Halen, but he's very, very vulnerable and introspective about being a very flawed person, and it was fascinating to read. He's another very deeply, deeply philosophical person. You can tell he's a writer, a brilliant business head. He has learned how. He's a lot like Buffett, you know, Jimmy Buffett took a brand and ran 100 miles with it until he died. And Hagar's the same way. He has taken a brand and an identity, and he's been able to do so well with it. I really, really respect him. It's a great book.
I've listened to a few interviews about him with the falling out with Van Halen, and he comes across as like, like, I feel like he's telling the truth, that he doesn't have any like real axes to grind to lie about anybody. He just comes across as genuine, which is, I think,
if you put his book side by side with David Lee Roth's Crazy from the Heat, they're very consistent in how they describe Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen, you know, musically incredibly gifted geniuses, but very deeply unhappy men. But they're both very consistent in the way they explain that.
I think that comes up a lot. Like, I think to be wildly talented and wildly successful, you have to be a little screwed up in some way, you know?
Yes.
It's too bad because I'm perfect, which probably means I'll never be wildly successful. I don't know. I don't think this is the book, but like there was some Marcus Buckingham, though. That's the dude, right? So there was like a problem finding the actual cover. I don't know. Maybe I'm just lazy. But
no, that's the right cover. I gave you the wrong name. So when I was at Best Buy years and years ago, as a director of online advertising, they made us read this. We had to take the test to learn what your strengths are, and it's things like command, self-control, competition, woo, empathy. It was fascinating. We had to map our strengths is what the test told us. The fascinating thing about Strength Finder is it really helps you become a better leader because you learn how to work with people who have a very different personality than you do. I'm a type A, so I don't always get to work with other type A personalities. So it was very shaping for me to learn how to talk to someone that had higher empathy or higher woo for somebody like me that had command. The best thing about Strength Finder is to take this test every 10 years and see how much it changes. It's really interesting.
I think this, so the focus on your strengths, I think there's two schools of thought there. I skew towards this ideology. I haven't read the book, but there's, work on your weaknesses or focus on your strengths. Yeah. I'd much rather just focus on my strengths because my it's too much work. I just get better at the thing
I think it's a philosophical difference of people that want to focus on one over the other. I think to be the kind of leader that you should be is you just need to have self-awareness to know that there are things you're really good at and things you're not good at. And, it's your job as the leader to go figure out how to sort of make a meatloaf out of it and, and be able to lead your team and make decisions and be okay with them.
I'm a big Patriots fan, and a big thing about Bill Belichick is they'd always say he puts his players in the position to succeed. Well, isn't that what everybody should do? If you get a short little twitchy guy, have him do slot. If you got a fucking long lanky guy that runs fast, have him go that way. So why would you not do that? I don't know, but I guess people don't. I don't want to rush through, but listen, we're at the hour, so let's talk about your third book. This guy, let me tell you about this guy. He yells at me a lot at the gym because sometimes I listen to motivational David Goggins thing. Because when I'm on the treadmill, I like somebody to call me soft. It angers me. This guy's very intense.
Yeah, no, he's great. My 24-year-old daughter, who's an ER nurse, got me turned on to him a few years ago. She was growing up an athlete, a college athlete. And as a type A girl, I so prescribe to the way he thinks about knowing your 40%, which is his philosophy is that we only use 40% of our capabilities and there's 60% of untapped potential. I love the way he thinks that it's really a no excuse, accept no less than your best. Get up the next day, put your feet down and make it happen regardless of what happened the day before. His backstory is so compelling and it really draws you in to know how he overcame adversity. And it's not just meeting expectations. It is like killing expectations of everything that he's done. But, when you ever want to sit down and feel sorry for yourself because this happened or that happened, read that book and all those problems go away. I love this book, love his philosophy.
Yeah, because he was something like a 300-pound exterminator eating 12 donuts every day, and then he goes and fails the Marine, the SEAL test a bunch of times. But now doesn't he own the pull-up record or something? It's a whirlwind.
He's a Navy SEAL. He also is, I think, special warfare. I mean, he has so many certifications, so many accolades for his military service. And again, this kind of take no prisoners mentality, particularly relating to someone in business, it really forces you to take everything that happens that maybe you didn't have a great day or you got yelled at or something bad happened or you made a mistake. And it puts it into perspective that, you got home, you figure out what you did wrong, you figure out how you're going to recover. And guess what? You're going to get up the next day and come back and keep going.
Yeah.
And that kind of workplace warfare mentality, I think is something that particularly with this new generation of folks coming to the workforce that have been, they've had this glide path, their whole young life. They've never done anything wrong. Everything's been mowed over for them. And so when they do fail and they do screw up, because everybody does, they can't handle it. They can't cope because they've never experienced failure. What I like about David Goggins' approach is okay, you failed. Fine. Get up. Go.
I know.
We need more of that.
We do. The only thing that bothers me about Goggins, he doesn't seem like he'd be a lot of fun to drink with. I don't know, man. He's very intense. I don't think Goggins can just hang out.
I don't know. I've never met him. I had an opportunity to go to a book signing and I did not go. So I know very little about him in that regard. But, I think that his message is quite good, regardless of your age or your generation, that, as human beings, and particularly as you are a parent, you are accountable to get up the next morning and keep going for sure. So, I just think he's great.
He's definitely right. Like, I mean, listen, it wasn't as if he was born and was just successful. Like he was fat and he was was failing at his job, and he went out and did like the hardest things, So
yeah, for sure. But like I said, it goes back to that 40% mentality that he talks about. There's 60% of your true potential that people never tap into because they're afraid, they're scared, or they're fear of failure, or they're just lazy. There's just, you sort of pick what bunch you're in. But there's something to be said for, never accepting less than your best. Some days that's hard to see, but that's where you have to go as a leader, as a parent, as a person. You have to keep going. You have to.
Even Motley Crue knew that because they lived through some hard times and they finally made it. See how it all comes together.
Yes, it all ties back. You can be my wingman anytime.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Do you want to? We should probably log off because we're over. But do you want to talk about? You want to do your 30-second elevator thing for your South?
Absolutely. So South College, we sit across 7 states. We have over 100 plus programs and concentrations across healthcare, business, technology. We also have some of the most beautiful campuses across the country. And it's really important to us that we're providing incredible opportunities for students to be in their communities as nurses, as physician's assistants, as doctor of pharmacy, but also business, technology. We have some incredible programs that are both online or competency-based, but we also have on-ground programs too. You can find us at www.south.edu.
Oh, you're good at that. You've done that a few times. I like it.
Just a few.
All right. I am going to log off the live, but you want to hang out in the green room for a second to
yeah, sure.
All right. You were Ben great. Thank you for coming on. I loved your answers. They were new, a lot of fresh. Loverboy, first time on the list. Anyway, I'll be back tomorrow, America. Have a lovely Tuesday evening. I'm sure you will. It's National